What's up, AmFest? How y'all feeling? You having a good time so far? I love seeing this many people all gathered to talk about how to save the country that we have that is so precious. I'm Sara Gonzales, for those who don't know me. I host a show on BlazeTV, Sara Gonzales Unfiltered. You can catch it Monday through Friday on YouTube, also on the BlazeTV app at 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Central. What does that make it in Mountain Time? 5 Mountain Time, since we're in Phoenix. Go ahead, John. As he...
You didn't see that. Good morning. My name is John Doyle. I am the host of the aptly named John Doyle Show, also on BlazeTV. Yeah, how about that program? And we are here to talk to you this morning a little bit about immigration, which actually, in my career of making people upset on the internet, is the issue I've received the most pushback for, because, you know, we can have our issues with the sort of rainbow mafia, as it were, and all the conservatives will be on your side about that. But when you talk about immigration, all of a sudden that starts to step on some toes in a very real way. And so I appreciate everyone here coming to see a Hispanic woman and an Irishman tell you why everyone else actually has to go back, and we get to stay here and remain American.
Can I ask for a second? I'm just really curious. How many of you are here because you thought that the title of this breakout session was a little too over the top and controversial? Anyone? No, it's okay, right? I genuinely want to know. Because I want to.
We have to take it further then. They're not satiated yet.
Hopefully within this conversation, and we'll encourage you guys to, we'll have some Q&A at the end here. We'll encourage you guys to ask some questions, because we're not really here to be combative or controversial. I actually think that it should be reasonable and common sense to hold these views. So, John, I'll go ahead and let you start.
I would never speak for a woman of color, obviously. I would sit myself down and listen. However, I am here a little bit to be combative because, frankly, I find it offensive that I have to listen to so many people who are not American tell me what it means to be an American. You know, I understand. Yeah. I understand, and I get a lot of flack for my Irish surname, but I will have you know that on my mother's side, I have ancestry that goes back to before the American Revolution. On my dad's side, it was something around the 1830s. And so knowing that my family came here and established this country is something that's very important to me, and it was very important to our founding fathers as well. You know, we often hear, of course, about the American Constitution. The top of that document actually has a paragraph which says that the entire purpose of the Constitution, which is to say the future of our country, is for ourselves and our posterity, meaning for the founding fathers and for their direct descendants. And so we think that this immigration issue is really the most important issue to discuss, because ultimately, if we lose on the immigration issue, we're literally not going to have our country. Not only because every other issue is downstream from immigration, because Democrats never won the argument, they simply changed its participants. Also, even if we could have our perfect country, but it wasn't really ours, would you really want to live there? Probably not. I would rather live in America in its degenerated, disintegrated state and still have it be America than have it be something that's completely unrecognizable to even my parents' generation. I do not want that. I do not accept that. I do not concede that we have to accept that as Americans. And so, was our title a little controversial? We are in the business of online politics. We do a little clickbaiting. It's fine. A healthy amount is okay. But it is ultimately true that, we as Americans get to decide our own immigration policy, and it is actually disrespectful for people who are not Americans to tell us why we need them as Americans to come and teach us how to continue doing what we've been doing since 1776, which is setting the example for the world in government, technology, society. The world looks to us, not the other way around.
And so, you're absolutely right, John. And so when you're looking at the problems that this country is facing right now, there are, as much as we are so happy that, we don't have Kamala Harris as our president right now, we can get a round of applause for that. There are so many days I wake up and I think about whatever problem it is that we're dealing with, and I'm like, wow, this would be so much worse if we had cackling Kamala as our president. But when you look at the problems that we are facing, because of course it isn't perfect, and when you have 4 years of a regime that is just ramming this country into the ground every which way possible, there are issues that still stem, that still, exist, that we have to deal with and we have to tackle. But I think we're here to tell you that all of those issues can be helped, if not solved completely, by the elimination of this mass migration immigration program, where we have decided that we're just here to help the entire world, right? When did we become, it's on us to disregard American citizens, to disregard their safety, to disregard their security, to disregard the amount of money that they have to pay in taxes, to welcome all of these people who weren't born here. And look, I have empathy for people who were not born in the United States. I get it. It's the greatest country in the world, okay? And I get wanting to come here. But that we don't owe them anything. They are not entitled to be here simply because they want to be. And so when you look at the statistics on this, take housing, for instance. I know housing is a big issue, especially with young people. How many of you are concerned with wanting to buy a house and not being able to afford it? Yeah. It's a lot. It's a big issue. Well, housing would be tremendously helped. Affordability of housing would be tremendously helped if we, A, continue to get all of the illegals out, and B, curb this immigration program, this visa program, this refugee resettlement program that we have right now. Let me just give you a quick statistic here. February 2025, a JP Morgan study said that, by the way, these numbers are low because this only estimates that 11.2 million undocumented immigrants, illegals, are here in this country. We know that they've been saying that for decades. The number is actually far more than that. But they say that housing demand obviously is, significant than reported figures suggest because of all of these people who are coming in here. They're getting subsidies, and then they're buying up these houses, and it makes it less affordable for you. It's an obvious supply-demand, issue. And so that in and of itself is an issue. Then on top of that, when you take the housing issue and you kind of compound it out into the community issue, it's really unnerving to live in a community. And I say this as someone who, I live in a community. It's a nice community. It's in the suburbs. I'm a mom of 2 boys. We live in the suburbs. And I can't speak to my neighbors. And it's a bit, it's something that it seems so small on the surface, but when you get in a community and you try to have a community with people, I know the left will say, diversity is our strength, diversity is our strength. No, it's not. No, it's not. And this means nothing against the color of anyone's skin, because diversity is not about the color of people's skin. It's about culture. It's about community. It's about being able to communicate with those around you. It's about sharing values. It's about sharing morals. And you can't have a community, a cohesive community that is successful if you invite people of all different cultures, of all different values, of all different principles, of all different morals, and invite them to live right next to you. It just never works. I mean, think about the schools.
It actually, if you've gone through the, conservative canon, you may have read at some point Robert Putnam's Bowling Alone, and he famously did a study measuring the effects of diversity on communities, and what he found is exactly, to Sarah's point, that diversity actually makes communities worse in the sense that people become less civically engaged, they're less trusting of their neighbors, less likely to involve themselves in politics, be that door knocking, voting, or things like that, because they start to look around and realize, like, this community isn't really mine. I mean, I don't necessarily have a problem with these people, but it's not exactly like we're all one unified force, and it tends to make people just sort of check out of society. And what happens when people check out of society? They become less trusting of each other. They still require some sort of security, some sense of like something unifying the country together, which tends to be an expansion of the federal government, an expansion of the state. Because, when you've got a small government, that exists very well when everybody is, speaking the same language, of the same culture. You don't need that government to really keep everything in line, because the people can more or less do that themselves. But when the people all of a sudden are on much different pages, now you need that larger government to come in and usher in some kind of stability. And the people, by the way, will happily vote for that and happily allow for that state to expand precisely because they crave that. And that's exactly what the Democrats have done. There was a guy named Patrick Reddy, who's considered to be a very prominent Democrat strategist, to the extent that we can see that that's like an actual job occupation. But he said in the 1990s that the Hart-Celler Immigration Act, which was the first immigration act in 1965 to change how America had typically conducted its immigration policy, he said that that act would be regarded as the Kennedy family's greatest contribution to the Democrat Party, period. And the reason for that is because it changed the way immigration policy in America functioned to be something that was taking into account the pre-existing demographics of the country and saying, all right, we're obviously America, people have come here from everywhere in Europe, we're going to maintain those proportions so that the country doesn't disintegrate into this sort of interethnic conflict and chaos. In 1965, however, that changed, and we said we're going to eliminate those quotas and we're going to allow for immigration for pretty much wherever in the world. 15 years later, by 1980, now suddenly 75% of all immigration into America was coming from South Asia, it was coming from Central America, Latin America, South America, and over time that has compounded rounded to where now you see what America looks like. You go to the airport, go to a shopping mall, an amusement park, it does not exactly look like the America depicted in Norman Rockwell paintings. And that's a problem because the Democrats have used that to embolden themselves to become more radical. I don't know if you guys know this, but the last time the Democrats won a majority of the white vote was 1964. It's been a minute. And the reason for that is that, white people, obviously, I don't know if you know this, but we have been in the country just a little bit longer because that's just like how it works. I mean, that's not like a bad thing. It doesn't mean you can't, be an American if you're not white, but typically the founding stock of America were these like white Anglos. And so if you've been in the country longer, you're going to have a greater instinct to want to preserve or rather conserve that country, align yourself with the conservative party. Whereas if you are coming from a new culture, you're going to maybe want to align yourself more with the revolutionary party, with the leftist party, the party that seeks not to conserve but to change how that country tends to operate. And so as the country has become increasingly less like its founding stock from Northwest Europe, the Democrats have realized they don't actually have to appeal to the sensibilities of normal white American Christians to win elections. They actually can get away with pursuing their more radical proclivities because they've imported tens of millions of people from these foreign cultures who will vote for them regardless because they offer them free stuff, which is of course paid for by your tax dollars, your white American Christian tax dollars. And so that is why the Democrats have become so crazy, yet they continue to win elections because no longer do they have to appeal to the normal middle Americans, right? Those people haven't voted for them in like literally 60 years. They can get away with advocating for grooming children, sex reassignment surgeries for children. I mean, literally the most insane things that have ever been spoken into a microphone on like an American political debate stage. And they get away with it and they continue to win these elections and continue to occupy our institutions of power precisely because they're not winning the argument, they simply cheated. They changed the people who get to have a say in who won the argument, who get to win elections and govern our country because we have all of these people who are frankly incompatible with what we regard to be the American way of life. And so that is why I agree with Mr. Patrick Reddy in the sense that this was the greatest gift from the Kennedys to the Democrat Party because it allowed them to become just as insane as they would have liked to have been in the 1960s, but couldn't yet because at the time the country was still a relatively moral Christian country. And because of these efforts, now it is no longer the case.
Yeah. And it really is, to John's point, it kind of highlights the issue that this isn't just an illegal immigration problem. It's really not. It is, we have so many people coming in on H-1B visas. You want to talk about the housing crisis? They're coming in, they're buying these houses, they're putting like 9 people in them. And you look at, we're importing all of these workers that's taking away from American jobs. And I know the left's talking point is always, well, but Americans won't do those jobs. I know, it's total horse crap. Of course Americans will do those jobs. And to that point, since we actually have an administration who is regaining law and order and kicking the illegals out and deporting them, and since we have over 2.5 million illegals deported, since that has happened, thank you, President Trump, Americans have seen historic employment growth. There's 2.57 million native-born Americans gaining employment, over 1 million foreign-born workers losing employment between January and September of this year. It's that easy. It's that easy.
You can actually just make your country better. It's
right,
like the coolest thing
you can, we can just do that. We can just close the border. We can just say we're going to put Americans first. We can just say, you know what? I think Americans will do those jobs.
They will, and I really, by the way, abhor this kind of rhetoric where we're supposed to believe in American exceptionalism, right? That means we are the exception. American people are the greatest. We put a man on the moon. I hate this moon landing denial stuff. We will talk about that maybe at a later time.
Another breakout session.
We'll talk about that right now. We will. Because we put a flag on the moon. Maybe the footage was a little doctored, but the flag is up there and we know that. And people indulge in this kind of content, not understanding the origin of moon landing denial was from people in third world countries who were literally just mad that America did that because it made them feel bad about themselves. And so as we were launching rockets into space, you had the same kinds of protesters you see now outside holding up signs outside of NASA that literally said money for the moon, but not for me. And so they just wanted more free stuff. But no one talks about this. Sorry, yeah, back to the other thing. Oh, I remember, okay.
Go ahead.
So we went to the moon, and we're going to go back. But the other thing that, because we are exceptional, of course, I really don't like this idea that America needs immigrants. We can welcome immigrants, sure, if they can contribute to our society. But if you believe in American exceptionalism, what that means is that Americans by themselves are not only sufficient, we are the best quality, right? So we actually don't need to draw from other sources to fuel our country and our growth and our innovation. We've done it just fine by ourselves until we opened up the floodgates to the third world. And so it's actually insulting to imply that we need immigrants from other countries to make America work, because what that implies is that American people by themselves are insufficient. They're lazy. They won't do the jobs. They're uneducated. It is so dishonest and evil to gatekeep younger generations from opportunities that their parents and grandparents would have had, and then tell them, I guess you guys aren't succeeding. We're going to have to open up the gates to China, India, wherever else, because you guys just aren't good enough. That is evil and that is cruel. That cannot be allowed to continue.
Yeah, to your point, John, I recall I go to a lot of protests and, stir some stuff up. I guess they might call me a troublemaker. I don't know. I just try to be real. But, I go to these protests. There was an illegal immigrant protest in Dallas. And I mean, just the fact that they are emboldened enough to go gather in a public space and proclaim themselves as illegal and not fear any repercussions is absolutely insane to me. I mean, that is how this country has treated them. Welcome criminals. We want you here. Please drain us economically. And so they're out there and they're protesting and they're waving. Not a single American flag in sight, by the way, right? Not a single American flag in sight, because they don't care to assimilate. They don't want to assimilate. For whatever reason, they think if they come here from a third world and they just continue their third world behavior, somehow America will become better. Like, that obviously makes no sense. It will only drag us down, import the third world, become the third world. But I have these conversations with them, and I'm recording them, and of course they always hassle me, and they try to, I get assaulted a lot at these things. But I remember someone telling me, to your point, John, I remember someone telling me, well, you guys need us, because who's gonna pick your berries? And I'm like, I think we can handle that ourselves, ma'am. I mean, I think Americans are competent enough to pick a strawberry out of the strawberry patch, but that's what they think of us. They think that we cannot handle that we need them. And there are certain cases, to John's point, the EB-5 visa. It is a visa in which you have to pay, you have to be established, you have to be wealthy, and you also have to contribute to American jobs. That may be a workable solution, but the H-1B, it's not enough anymore. It's not enough. We've brought too many people in, and it's not enough that you can take an American job. I mean, that's what it is at the end of the day. You're taking an American job. Why should we allow that into our country when Americans need jobs right now, right? And so when you look at all of the spots that are being taken in these universities by foreign-born people, they're coming in here, they're being educated by us, we're subsidizing it, and then we're sending them back to their countries? That's absurd. That's absolutely absurd, but we're doing it. And so when you look at President Trump's administration, just to give you another stat here, the number of new foreign students taking spots, so taking American children's spots in higher education, has fallen by 17% just over the last year since he's been back in office.
American students also, if you look at the PISA, which stands for something I'm told is important, it's some sort of like national measure of how students perform globally. It's true, you can look it up. American students actually perform like within the top 5 when you isolate for just American students. You start introducing other demographics into the assessment, all of a sudden our scores go down. But American students by themselves are actually some of the top performing in the world. And those students are the ones who should be capable of landing these jobs outside of college, but are not. And this is, again, why the immigration issue gets us in so much trouble, and why nobody talked about it, by the way, until Donald Trump descended from the golden escalator. If you remember, people in America used to have, like, who was our choice? It was Jeb Bush. Jeb Bush literally wrote a book.
Please clap.
Yeah. Jeb Bush literally wrote a book about why we need to accept like more immigrants. And it's just like, okay, this was going to be our guy had Donald Trump not descended from the escalator. But you may not know this, but I'll give you a little inside baseball here. To take a position like we're taking now on immigration in general was actually enough to get you fired from conservative media. It would get you literally blacklisted. You were not allowed to question this orthodoxy. The Democrats would say total open borders. Republicans would say maybe a little bit less total open borders. And that was it. That was the established paradigm of what our options were for American voters. Despite the fact that American voters have literally been begging for decades now, you can look at opinion polling, to have lower levels of immigration, totally cutting off illegal, but also lower levels of legal immigration, but no party party was willing to represent that until Donald Trump got up there and was like, why are we letting these people in? It's a total disaster. And so we've been able to shut this down and start to finally move this in the right direction, but it still steps on so many toes because the issue is unique in that if I disagree with you on economic policy or social policy, there is this kind of asterisk to that where at the end of the day, I could get you to agree with me, or I could get you to, sign on to my position. So ultimately, it's not like we're really butting heads, even if we disagree. But immigration, if I'm right about that, then maybe you're supposed to be here in the first place. And that steps on toes in a way that a lot of people, frankly, are too cowardly to confront. And they've allowed for our country to disintegrate as a result of that cowardice. And so, you mentioned the education issue or the housing issue. There are people who make very lucrative careers writing policy papers on how to actually solve housing, actually solve education, just beating around the bush, getting every idea except for the one that's obviously staring us in the face, which is to say, when you get people who aren't supposed to be here out of the country, all of a sudden the country goes back to normal. And you see decreases in housing prices, increases in, education scores, things like that. And so it is so obviously an issue which isn't going to solve everything, but it does bleed into all of the other issues that we spend so much time discussing, but that people will not acknowledge because they don't want to get in trouble. They want to maintain their spot in Congress, writing policy papers or whatever it may be. And ultimately, that is their job. Their job is to intellectualize having sold out the American people and convincing them that, no, we can solve every other problem, every other way, just don't talk about immigration. And the poor American with the beautiful heart, as Donald Trump says, okay, well, I hope you're right that they'll assimilate. Look at where that got us. They're not assimilating. They are conquering, and it's bad.
Yeah, to John's point, you don't even have to look, and I know that we want to take some Q&A, so we'll wrap up here in the next few minutes, but you don't even have to look at Europe. I could make the case, just look at how it's going for Europe. Look at how it's going in the UK. Look at how the fact that they have imported these people, crime is up, sex crime is up, violent crime is up. I mean, it's a disaster in the UK. You don't even have to go that far. Look at what's happening here with Zohran Mamdani. You've got a Muslim commie who is now the incoming mayor of New York City. Why? Because you have a bunch of foreign-born people coming into New York. It used to be the city that was the shining example of what the United States was. Now they're going to be destroyed by their diversity. Then you have Ilhan Omar on top of that, who really needs to get out of my country, by the way. I am so sick of this woman who wants to talk about how oppressed she is as she sits there as a congressperson in my country. She was brought here. She has not actually appreciated a thing that has been given to her. And now all she does is crap on the country that brought her here and gave her the citizenship that she doesn't even care about and only uses to her advantage and to her community's advantage. It's sick. It's disgusting. We shouldn't allow it. I don't know if you guys realize this, but we actually have all of these naturalized citizens sign a form. And they sign a form saying that they will renounce all of their allegiances to whatever country, whatever province, wherever they're from. They renounce all of the allegiances to those countries, and they vow to uphold the Constitution, to support the Constitution and the laws of the United States. Does that sound like something that Ilhan Omar is doing? No. Of course not. And so we as Americans need to get strict about, okay, if you're here and you've been naturalized, you know what? It's not off the table to denaturalize you and send you back home.
So true. So I guess what you're saying is in America, we like baseball and we like picket fences and we like apple pie. We do not like marrying your brother.
We don't. No. No.
I'm so glad you bring up the point about denaturalization, because forever what we've heard about immigration policy is something that's like, well, they'll come into the country and they'll assimilate, and that's enough. We can be united as Americans, not by the fact that we're Americans, but by that we all just check the box like, yes, I agree with this idea. We're united by ideas, which has never been the case ever in any country. No country has ever actually existed as a propositional nation. That is the lie that has been sold to us to lull us into submission as our country is conquered. But you notice that the people who say that we can be really just united by our ideals and we allow for all of these illegal aliens and these, third world people to come in legally, they would never take that to its full conclusion and say, well, if it's true that we are a propositional nation, we can be united by our ideals, then we actually have to denaturalize and deport everybody who is not subscribed to our ideals. I would agree with that, by the way. You know, I would say that, yeah, sure, if you want to do that, the propositional nation, fine. Let's give everybody a test, and if they're not, you know, pledging full loyalty to America, then yeah, let's denaturalize, deport them, and all of a sudden we can have, you know, perfect America again. But they never take it that far, because for them it's not about that. It is about lulling the well-meaning American people into accepting this kind of immigration policy, which has gotten us to exactly where we are now. And it is the only chance we have of taking our country back. With immigration, it is literally the only issue that matters, because if you lose on immigration, you are going to have a bunch of people who are going to vote for Democrats no matter what, which means you're going to lose on every other issue no matter what in a long enough timeline. And so that is why, insofar as somebody is not subscribed to what needs to happen with immigration, they are not an ally. They are an enemy. Yeah, because what they're trying to do is basically like ruin our whole country, even if, you know, their intentions are good. If they are not willing to address the biggest avenue that the left has for obtaining, expanding, and consolidating power, then they're just wasting our time at this point.
Yeah. I think we want to open it up for a Q&A. We've got some hands raising here. Oh my gosh, this guy is like excited right here.
In 1924 was the first immigration bill. The progressives were in charge of both bills. That stopped the immigration from Europe and from countries and people that wanted to assimilate here. But in the 65 bill you talked about, they said, oh, we don't want them. We want all the people that are going to help destroy our country, right? And the other thing is the progressives have been denigrating our educational system for over 100 years. There's a book written, The Deliberate Dumbing Down of American Education. So while I understand what you're saying about illegal immigration and allowing Muslims like crazy coming into the country, we still need to have a rational policy for those who want to assimilate, right?
I would agree with that. The question is, I mean, how do you decide that? How do you find out? And so presently, right now, we don't have enforcement for that. You know, we can say, of course, people may want to assimilate. How do we actually enforce that? You know, there would be a way of maybe having some kind of test that would ask proxy questions, like, you know, what is your view on the founding fathers? The problem is, these people, they will train themselves to just answer the questions in the way that they need to be answered in order to get access to the country. And regarding your point on education, it's absolutely true. American education has been dumbed down completely. What I would say to that is Los Angeles public schools. In the 1960s, believe it or not, this is going to sound crazy, so I'm glad we're all sitting down. The Los Angeles public schools were some of the best in the world, with some of the highest performing students. That is no longer the case, and the reason for that is like something like 50-something% of students in LA public schools are either illegal aliens or the children of illegal aliens. And so we have a situation where we can't bring these people up to the standards of American students, and so we have to dumb down the entire curriculum so that these students who are lower performing and come from countries which do not, frankly, historically value education the way that we do in the West, can somehow pass their classes and get good grades and go to college and things like that. So, you know, you've got these private schools in America, you've got public schools in America that do very well on their tests and they have much higher quality education. For some reason, it's in the most diverse areas that you see these problems with education, with low scores being dumbed down. And I think, again, it just gets back to the immigration question. You know, who are the students that we're trying to teach about, you know, I don't know, John Locke and Thomas Hobbes? Like, these people are just not exactly American. And so I do think it all gets back to that, though, of course, I agree that we need, you know, better education for American students.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Hi. So I think that legal immigration should be much less than it currently is, but shouldn't necessarily be zero. So I see in the automotive and manufacturing industry right now that like countries like China, for instance, do much better in certain ways. But also, I also believe in Christian values in this nation. And so my question is, how can we more get people that are have the same values as us, but still, I guess, exclude some of the people coming from other nations that are more focused on, that don't have those values, such as Middle East, China, etc.
Well, isn't that the question? I mean, I think that that's the question that we do want answered, because, I mean, I believe in Christian values as well. I am a Christian, and I believe in showing compassion, but I think that I believe in showing compassion to Americans first. And so, I mean, when you see that the way that a lot of these, you know, going back to the Muslim issue, a lot of these Muslims, I mean, they can practice taqiyya, where they actually can just lie They can just lie. They can say that they are not Muslim. They can say that they don't actually want to conquer the West. They can say that they are a Christian. I mean, they can say whatever, and their religion actually dictates that they do that in order to advance their agenda. So when you're dealing with people who you know that they can do that they will do that they will go to any length possible to try to come into your country to destroy it from within, it's just not worth the risk to me. The reward that's out there, I mean, I would argue the negative net benefit is far greater than any sort of reward that you might get from importing people with certain skills. It's just not worth it to me to put my children in a less safe place just for the sake of bringing in foreign-born workers. I don't know if you have anything.
Yeah, and so true. How about that? I would also say that I think that by the time we really start discussing this question, I think we're all going to be much older and grayer, because what we need for the next at least 10 years is what's been referred to as an immigration moratorium, which is to say we just need to stop.
Yeah.
Because, as I'm sure everyone here knows, we have a lot of people who are American who are themselves not very aligned with our values these days. Yeah. And the reason for that is because the left controls all of the opinion curating institutions. They have academia, they have the media. So until we can start to get a little bit more cultural, I guess you'd say, holding as conservatives, I don't think we need to worry too much about non-Americans and bringing them in. I wish them the best and I pray for them. However, right now we've got a lot of problems inside the house that we need to work out. And then maybe once we get that a little bit more under control, we can start to accept new people on the team.
Thank you for your question.
Hey, John, big fan. What is an American?
That's a great question, actually. You know, this is a question that I have tried to answer. A lot of people have tried to answer. And, you know, you get a lot of interesting things. For example, Vivek Ramaswamy has given an answer to this just yesterday and years prior to this event. Hey, he's a nice guy, you know. No, he's a great guy. Just, you know, on this issue, he's a little bit wrong.
A little wrong.
In his idea, he would say America is somebody who believes in America. And this is sort of like a circuitous kind of answer, circular reasoning. Again, it gets back to this idea of a propositional nation, right? And the problem with that is, I don't know if you guys know this, but our ideas, our Constitution is publicly available information. If you have an internet connection, you can access all of this. And so it's like, if America is truly just an idea and that is what defines us, why do people in other countries not just copy our idea? I mean, it's right there. We would even maybe be flattered if they did, but for some reason, China, India, Latin America, they don't just copy our idea and become America, become everything that we are. And in fact, there have been countries who have tried to do something similar to that, like Liberia, for example. If you look at the American Constitution and the Liberian Constitution, they are almost one-to-one. They literally like copy and pasted our document, our founding document. But for some reason, curiously, Liberia does not exactly look like a nice place to live. I don't know about you. I know the Zestimates in America are looking a little rough. I don't have any plans to go to Liberia anytime soon, even if their constitution is a mirror image of ours. And so it's to say that, you know, if it were true that America is great because we have the American dream, right? And then I think he even said this yesterday in his speech. There's no Chinese dream. There's no, you know, Malaysian dream. Okay, well then why would you want to bring those people over here in the first place if there's no dream there, right? Doesn't that mean that they're going to be incompatible? So I reject that wholeheartedly. Americans are simply Americans themselves. We are people who are rooted in Christianity, Anglo-Saxon tradition. I mean, America is an outgrowth of 1,000 years of Anglo-Saxon cultural traditions, and it's like you're a fish in water, right? Everything you see about your society is so obvious to you that you would never even think to define it and make a bullet point list of it. But these are things that other countries view to be very foreign. Our Christian values, our common law system, we have a very unique and particular way of doing things right now. That being said, of course, we are Americans, and so, you know, some of us are Irish, German, Italian. We've more or less been able to assimilate into what we understand to be American. So it's not so simple as saying, like, obviously the Dutch are the Dutch and the French are the French. We have had waves of immigration. We have had people assimilate into what we regard to be American society. These people are just as American as maybe you or I are. There is an ethnic composition, of course. There is a religious character to the nation. And so that is the thing that is so unique about America, is that we do exist as this kind of pan-European country, which is to say we brought over a bunch of people from different European countries with maybe different religious practices, but ultimately they were European Christians. And America was founded as a country for that posterity specifically. Doesn't mean that other people can't be Americans, but it does mean that we have to acknowledge that and not pretend quite evilly that those people are somehow just as American. The people who have ancestors on this continent going back 400 years are somehow just as American as people who got here literally 5 minutes ago because they check a box that says, like, I agree with common sense. Like, that's not how it works.
Thank you for your question.
Most people agree that immigrants shouldn't be here, but there is a lot of controversy on how they should be deported. What would you say is the best way to deport them? Because, for example, like at the Hyundai factory in Savannah, like even like there's been a lot of controversy over that. Like, so what would you say is the best way to lawfully deport them?
Well, as President Trump wrote in his 2011 book, It's Time to Get Tough. It's time to get tough, and I can see these videos, and they're very sad, of course, I guess, but ultimately that kind of controversy is manufactured by the media to make people upset about what's happening. So what's the best way to deport people? Probably just deporting them. Right. Is it the best thing in the world to make like edits of it and put it on like official government Twitter accounts? I think so, but objectively... Maybe not, but there is a ratio that exists. Like the numbers that have been coming out, it says something like 2.5 million people have left the country. You've got like 500,000 through forced deportations, another 2 million through voluntary deportations. And people ask, do you believe that? And I do actually, because historically what you tend to see when you are using the federal government to carry out these kinds of deportation operations, whether it's under a Trump administration or an Eisenhower administration, you do see a kind of ratio that exists. Sometimes it's 1 to 4, sometimes it's 1 to 7. The number, I suppose, is debatable, but there is a ratio that exists between those who are forcefully deported through ICE, DHS, and those who kind of see the climate that's being created as maybe not so friendly, shockingly, to illegal aliens anymore, and who then go home on their own accord. And so I think that's probably the best way to do it, is continue like rounding up criminal aliens. And obviously, we're not cruel, we're Christians, but using law enforcement to enforce the law and send them back. And other illegal aliens who are not supposed to be here, and there are probably 40 to 70 million. Ann Coulter proved that 10 years ago in Adios America, that it was at least 30 million. That was before the Biden administration literally opened up the borders and allowed at least 10 million more people to flood in. And they've had kids since then, anchor babies. So we have a lot of people who need to go back. And so when you're dealing with a civilizational threat at this scale, I'm less concerned, frankly, about the particulars. And as long as I'm seeing like, 7-figure numbers that are going back, I can sign off on that. I can be content with that.
Yeah. I always joke that I'm honestly fine with, like, we should raise money and just, you could pay to press a button that would take a catapult and just send them across the border. And we could contribute it to the nation's deficit, and it would be a win-win. But in all reality, I am actually very staunch on this. And I say this as a woman with the last name Gonzales. I realize that. But it's really, like, I don't owe them anything. I don't owe them a compassionate way of leaving. We don't owe them, like, a dignified way of leaving. They entered our country, and they are criminals. They're all criminals. I don't care if they have a job here. I don't care if they got married. I don't care if they have children here. Those particulars are really of no concern to me, because at the end of the day, if you want to blame anyone for them being gathered up and sent back home, if you want to blame anyone, you can blame the person committing the crime, which is the illegal. And you can blame Joe Biden and Kamala Harris if they entered during that administration, because they made it so easy for them. So for me, I would like them to be, for them to be deported, for them to be found, for them to be acquired, for them to be deported, at whatever way the safest way possible is for our men and women who are serving in ICE, in DHS, in the military. Whatever way they deem the safest for them is what I'm for, because we owe these criminals nothing.
That's an excellent point. To that, I would also add the fact that like millions of people who are here illegally will just leave and go home, which I'm happy about, but the fact that they will do that the second the money dries up and all of a sudden it's tough for them to get free stuff, really makes you wonder how much they really love this country, right? We all survived the Biden administration. None of us would have ever fled our country because it's actually ours and we actually love it for reasons other than just getting free stuff. So if these people really wanted to be as American as you or I, they probably would have stayed, but they don't. I think it's a little heated and they just go right home, which I'm glad about. They should continue to do that, but like also, they're not really that American if they do that. We don't quit, right? We go to the moon.
Thank you for your question.
I spent about 15 minutes talking to the protesters outside here, protesting
you.
our
So sorry.
event here. It was
I'm gonna
super
go.
fun,
I want to go
actually.
talk to them later.
Yeah, it was really fun. But I felt a little bit like Charlie Kirk, being able to, I was trying to say, let's have some open dialogue. Let's talk about why are you here? Why are you protesting? They're calling me fascist and pedophile, all the things. And I go, but my point is, I started talking to him and saying, well, let's have open dialogue. Let's talk about this. I think if we talk more about what do we agree upon and what are the kinds of things that we agree on, we can bring more people into the Republican Party. And one of the things I know people on the left say, we're against immigration. And I think a lot of people in the Republican Party don't emphasize how important it is for us to start the conversation off as we're against illegal immigration. We're all immigrants at some point. We all came into the country. I know we brought a lot of people in illegally, not because of us, because of the last administration, but I think my question is, do you think we could bring more people to the side of the Republican mindset by being more careful with our words regarding when we talk about immigration, that we say illegal immigration is wrong, but we want to change some of the laws to make it better for us to bring in people legally. Do you disagree with that?
Well,
Yes.
I can tell your heart's in the right place. To that, I would only say, we are never going to convince these people, and I hate to be cynical in my old age, but you have to understand where the mainstream Democrat Party is. These people are advocating for the genital mutilation of children. These are not people who just haven't heard the right idea yet. These are people who are completely brainwashed. And I mean, look at what they did to Charlie Kirk. He was a guy who just wanted to talk about ideas, and they celebrated his assassination. So the way that we bring more people into the Republican Party, I think, because people tend to side with the strong horse, is not by trying to make common ground with people who want to kill us and kill our country. It's by standing strong for what we believe in and saying, look, we don't like illegal immigration, and frankly, we don't like legal immigration either, because if I see 1 million people walking towards the southern border, and the only difference is they go through this door to get in legally, or they go through this door to get in illegally, and they're from like Guatemala or India or China, there's no difference at the end of the day. These are people who are coming from foreign cultures who have no desire to assimilate, and if they're walking into my country and they went through the like legal route or illegal route, the effect on our social fabric and on our political systems is going to be the same. And we've tried it the nice way for 60 years. We've tried it the, well, we don't like illegal, but legal's fine, and that ended up just sticking a big knife in our back, because now all the problems we've seen in terms of emboldening the Democrat Party to become so radical are because you have all these legal immigrants who have children who are now American citizens, and they are voting for the Democrat Party, which is the greatest force for fundamentally uprooting American society as we know it. And so, and also too, the public opinion polling, like I mentioned, people are very in favor of lower immigration rates, even the moderates, which is why Trump was so good on this issue. And it's only Democrats calling us, xenophobes, racist, Nazis. You cannot take seriously the words of people who believe that like women can use the men's restroom. Like nothing they say even matters, and so I wouldn't try to reach some middle ground with these people anymore, because they're just bad people.
So your position is cut off immigration, period.
We
That
need
is
a
right.
moratorium on immigration, yes. Yes.
For how long?
At least 10 years. We need to deport the people.
Okay.
Hold on.
I think you should make that clear how long, because to say we don't have any immigration ever starting right today for all eternity, I think that's not the way our founding.
I understand what you're
I
saying.
don't think that you can't just set a time right now. It's we need to get all of the illegals out. We need to totally reform the system. We need to denaturalize and deport the people who have taken advantage of the naturalization process. And as long as that takes, we ain't letting anyone else in. We don't owe it to them. I'm really sorry. We can talk afterwards, maybe. I just know we've got like 2 more minutes and I want to get to another question. Thank you for your question.
A Somalian man can move to China, but he'll never become Chinese. He can move to England, but he won't become English. Can he move, if he moves to America, can he become American? If so, why?
No, because he's a Somalian.
How are you?
And that's how they view themselves. Look at what they did to the Minnesota state flag. Look at Ilhan Omar,
Exactly.
married her brother, by the way, who says, my interest is to the Somalian people. Or
I
whatever.
represent Somalian interests. That's what she said.
It just doesn't work, dude.
And by the way, she should be denaturalized and deported for that specific comment. Just that.
So if you view yourself as an American, you can be an American. Is that what you're saying?
That's a very, again, our hearts are in the right place. That's a Ronald Reagan line. You can move anywhere in the world and not be a Chinaman or wherever, but in America, you can be an American. That was a great applause line when the country was something like, 95% like white Christian. Now it's a little bit different, and you see the way that immigration works is you have all these different groups coming over, and they do not assimilate. It's not, white picket fences and apple pies. They establish their own neighborhoods, their own ethnic beachheads and political lobbies, and curiously, they all vote not in supporting of, lower taxes, lower government. They want more government, higher taxes to then pay for all of their friends and family to come over too. And so, on paper, could they perhaps be an American? I mean, anything can happen on paper, right? But in practice, what we're seeing is something far different, meant to deracinate and harm Americans, and that's why they've done this to us for 60 years. So we will stop it.
Thank you, guys. We're getting
Thank you so much.
the wrap. We appreciate you so much. America first.